In many countries, labor law protects the rights of workers and explains their responsibilities at work. Job descriptions, contracts, and interviews often require lawyers and HR professionals to explain these rules in English. In today's lesson, you'll learn the basic vocabulary for workers' rights and responsibilities, and you'll practice using must and have to, two very common structures for talking about legal obligations. By the end of today's lesson, you will understand and use common employment law words like staff, wage, and job agreement. Practice using must and have to explain rights and duties. For example, the employer must pay wages. The worker has to follow safety rules. Learn key legal phrases such as minimum wage and safe workplace. This will give you the confidence to explain basic employment law in simple English. Imagine this. In a training session, someone asks, what must an employer do for the worker? What must a worker do for the employer? You explain, the employer must pay wages and provide a safe workplace. The worker must follow safety rules and complete the job responsibly. This simple conversation shows why we need today's vocabulary and grammar. A job agreement is the understanding or legal paper between the worker and the company. It explains what the worker must do, how much they will be paid, and their rights. For example, there is a job agreement that explains pay and hours. Imagine Anna starts a new job at a hotel. Before she begins, she signs a job agreement that says she must work 40 hours a week and will earn a certain amount of money each month. In formal English, this is often called a contract, but job agreement is a simpler and also common way to say it. Staff means the group of workers employed by a company. For example, there are 20 staff members in the office. Imagine, in a school, the staff includes teachers, secretaries, and cleaner. In a hospital, the staff includes doctors, nurses, and receptionists. Staff is a collective word, so you can talk about all employees together. A manager is the person responsible for making sure the staff do their jobs correctly. For example, the manager must check that the staff follow the rules. Imagine in a restaurant, the manager tells the waiters what to do, checks the kitchen, and makes sure the customers are happy. In a factory, the manager makes sure the staff arrive on time, wear safety equipment, and meet production goals. The manager represents the employer in daily operations. A wage is the payment a worker receives for their work. It is often calculated by the hour, the day, or the week. For example, the worker receives a wage every week. Imagine a factory worker earns $5 per hour. At the end of the week, he has worked 40 hours. So his weekly wage is $200. In professional jobs, people often use the word salary, but both mean payment for work. A shift is the set period of time when a worker does their job. For example, there is a night shift from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. For example, in a hospital, nurses work in shifts. One nurse works the morning shift, another works the evening shift, and another works the night shift. In a factory, workers may change shifts every week. The word shift is very common when talking about jobs with rotating hours. Health and safety are rules that protect workers from accidents and illness at work. For example, the company must follow health and safety rules. Imagine On a construction site, workers wear helmets and gloves. In an office, workers have safe chairs and computers that do not hurt their eyes. These are all part of health and safety. The law usually requires employers to protect workers, and workers also have to follow the rules. Working conditions describe the environment and rules of the workplace, things like hours, safety, pay, and treatment. For example, the law protects fair working conditions for staff. Imagine, in one company, workers have clean offices, fair hours, and breaks. These are good working conditions. In another company, workers have very long hours, low pay, and unsafe equipment. These are bad working conditions. Employment law protects workers so they have safe and fair working conditions. Benefits are extra advantages workers receive besides their normal pay. For example, there are benefits such as health insurance and vacation days. Imagine a worker's wage is $500 per month, but the company also gives health insurance, paid vacation, and lunch at the cafeteria. These extras are benefits. Benefits are an important part of many job agreements. In English, we use must and have to talk about obligations and responsibilities. Must often sounds stronger and more formal. Example, the employer must pay wages. Have to also means obligation, but is used more in everyday speech. For example, workers have to follow safety rules. Imagine you are explaining job duties. You might say, the worker must sign the contract, or the worker has to arrive on time. Both mean the action is necessary. It is not optional. Let's look at more examples. The employer must provide a safe workplace. This is a legal duty. The worker has to complete tasks responsibly. This is a responsibility in the contract. Employers must respect contracts. This shows that the law requires employers to follow agreements. Workers have to respect company rules. This shows the responsibility of workers. Using must and have to helps you explain clearly what the law requires. The minimum wage is the lowest legal amount of money a worker can be paid for their work. Governments create this rule to protect workers from being paid too little. For example, there is a minimum wage set by law. Imagine in one country, the minimum wage is $5 per hour. This means that even if a worker agrees to work for $3 per hour, the employer must still pay $5 per hour. Because the law does not allow payment below the minimum. The minimum wage is one of the most important protections for workers, especially in low paying jobs. It guarantees that all staff receive at least a basic, fair payment for their work. A safe workplace means a place of work that does not put workers in danger. This includes safe buildings, safe equipment, and rules that protect workers from accidents or injury. For example, the employer must provide a safe workplace. Imagine in a factory, workers use machines. The employer must make sure the machines are safe, that workers receive training, and that they wear helmets or gloves. In an office, like we talked about before, this could mean safe electrical wiring, clean air, and chairs that protect the back. If the employer does not provide a safe workplace, workers can get hurt, and the employer may be responsible under employment law. A safe workplace is one of the most basic rights of every worker. Equal treatment means that all workers must be treated fairly with no discrimination. Workers cannot be treated differently because of their gender, race, religion, disability, or other status. For example, workers must receive equal treatment. Imagine two workers do the same job. One is a man and the other is a woman. Equal treatment means they must receive the same pay, the same opportunities, and the same respect. If an employer pays one worker less only because of gender or race, that is discrimination, and it breaks the principle of equal treatment. This rule is a key part of international labor law and is protected in many countries. An employee handbook is a written guide that explains the rules and responsibilities of workers in a company. For example, there is an employee handbook in the company. Imagine a new worker starts at a company. On the first day, they receive a small book or PDF that says, "You must come on time. You must follow health and safety rules. You have the right to rest breaks and vacation days." The handbook helps workers understand both their rights and their duties. It is not always a legal contract, but it is an important document that shows company policy in clear language. Duty of care means that the employer must act in a responsible way to protect the health, safety, and well being of workers. For example, the employer has a duty of care to protect workers. For example, a company sends workers to drive long distances. The employer has a duty of care to give them safe cars, regular breaks, and insurance. If the employer ignores this duty and an accident happens, the company may be legally responsible. The duty of care is more than just health and safety rules. It is the general legal responsibility of the employer to think about the worker's safety and to take action to protect them. Let's finish with a story that puts everything together. A group of new staff begins work at a factory. Before they start, there's a job agreement for each worker. The agreement explains their wage, their working conditions, and their shifts. On the first day, the manager welcomes the staff and gives them an employee handbook. The handbook explains the rules. Workers must arrive on time. Workers have to follow health and safety rules. The employer also has responsibilities. The employer must respect the minimum wage and must provide a safe workplace. The company has a duty of care to protect the workers. All staff must receive equal treatment, no discrimination. And besides wages, there are benefits such as vacation days and health insurance. This story shows how rights and responsibilities work together. Employees must pay fairly and keep the workplace safe. Workers have to follow rules and do their tasks responsibly. By using today's vocabulary, grammar, and phrases, you can now explain the basics of workers' rights and responsibilities in simple English. Let's review everything you learned today. First, you learned vocabulary for work and employment law. You can now use words like job agreement, staff, manager, wage, shift, health and safety, working conditions, and benefits to describe the workplace in clear English. Second, you practice grammar with must and have to. These two small words are very powerful. They show obligation and responsibility. For example, the employer must pay wages, the worker has to follow safety rules. Third, you studied important legal phrases: minimum wage, safe workplace, equal treatment, employee handbook, duty of care. Finally, you used a wrap up story. You saw how workers and employers both have rights and responsibilities. Workers have to follow rules and complete tasks responsibly. Employers must respect wages, safety, equal treatment, and benefits. By combining vocabulary, grammar, and legal phrases, you are now able to give a simple explanation of workers' rights and responsibilities. Explaining workers' rights and responsibilities in English is a valuable skill for lawyers and professionals. In our legal English community, you will get full access to beginner, intermediate, and advanced courses, plus live sessions and a private forum to practice with other lawyers and students. If you want to keep improving step by step, click the link in the description and join us today.